Yo, I have a 1968 Ford Galaxy 500 convertible in here with a 427. Needs a couple of things done to this, so I'm going to do a couple of videos on it. I'm going to start off with some valve cover gaskets. He's got a leaker on here. They were replaced not too long ago. Aftermarket Chinese valve covers probably. So I got to straighten these out. These cars were built back in a day where mechanics didn't need to be very smart, so this should be pretty straightforward and easy. It's got some aftermarket things on here I got to work around, like these guys here. 7/16 bolts on these. That'd be an 11 millimeter for all you metric guys. They got the fancy little valve cover thingies on the bottom rail to keep it from leaking where it was. And they were like this. And that's upside down. They're supposed to be this way. So, fancy. Every time I work on something like this too, I always got to keep in mind that it's been worked on for the last 50 years from about 40 different people. So I don't really want to try to look at this too hard, because I could live under this hood trying to make everything better. These old cars are actually extremely well built and extremely reliable, but after people work on them for 50 years that don't know as much as they should, they're not really anymore. Looks like there's some headwork that's been done on here. There's aftermarket retainers on it. Nothing too fancy. I see problem number one right here. They were using silicone on these valve cover gaskets. Permatex, that's a big no-no. These just slide around when you do that. There's generally 3 different kinds of material you can get for these old school valve cover gaskets. He said he had these cork over rubber ones laying around and he didn't know what I wanted, so he bought some Felpro rubber ones. And there's also some that are just solid cork. That's like original. I actually like the cork over rubber a lot better than rubber, because this rubber is really squishy and it moves around a lot more. So generally too, when I'm hot rodding stuff, if I use these, I can get away with using them twice sometimes. So I'm going to have them return this rubber. I'm just going to peel this rubber junk off of here. Yeah, they use gaskets. They use this Permatex, and it didn't stick to anything. It just moved around. It didn't stick to the rubber at all. It's just a waste of time. You can tell it's leaked everywhere. I'm going to wire wheel these clean. Anyways, you get the idea. See you in a week. Well, I got this cleaned up good enough. If you look, you can see, I don't know if I can get a good view of this, but you can tell that this valve cover is not flat anymore. All these bolt holes are all crushed in, which is no good. You want to tighten these just so that gasket squishes down without actually bending the valve cover. These are rather cheap. It's a little warped, but not too bad. A lot of people just buy new valve covers, but I've been known to make junk work. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is just put this in a vise and just these holes so they bend the opposite way. You don't want them flat either. You want them bent the opposite way. Now I can take a rag and some brake cleaner and just wipe this surface off and make sure there's no grease or oil on this surface. It needs to be perfectly clean. I got a can of Permatex High Tack here. I'm going to use 0 gasket sealant on this. High Tack only. I'm just going to paint this surface. High Tack's great because it'll stick the gasket down and it won't move around. Chrome on a gasket, it just slides all over the place. You never, ever, ever use silicone on these. People do it all the time. They don't know what they're doing. Okay, I just got a fine little coat on here. I'm going to put a coat on this gasket too. These gaskets and valve covers, they're idiot proof, so they can go either way. So I don't have to check it and make sure it's backwards. I have this coated well enough, and I generally let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes so this stuff sets up really nice. Let this sit for about 10 minutes. I can just stick this on here a little bit at a time. I got to stretch it just a little bit so the holes line up. That's fine. Get all the holes lined up and the little tabs in the groovies. I can just push this gasket down and make sure it's pushed down really nice. That's all I need to do. It won't slide around and move or anything. It's there to stay. Now that this gasket's on here, I'm looking at it and it's kind of going this way. And that's kind of wrong. So I'm just going to hammer down on this with a dead blow a little bit and just try to knock it down a little. Oops, that's a little much. That looks pretty flat enough. I can be satisfied with that. I already cleaned this surface. I got all the silicone off of that. I can just slap this baby back on here. I'm actually going to put these back on the right way. These are really cheesy. They got these long slots in them. It's just not cheap and cheesy. Just, they kind of like want to fall right off. Jeez, aftermarket. Oh, here we go. Put them upside down. There we go. I'm going to put these valve covers on by hand. I never use a torque wrench on them. I always go just by feel. And you want to do it just enough so it doesn't bend the valve cover and it squishes the valve cover gasket down. And I generally like to hold my ratchet like this. Just 2 fingers behind here because that's all the leverage I can get on it. And then I know I'm not going to be over torquing the thing. For right now, I'm just going to snug them down just ever so slightly. Start in the center and work my way out. Feels really nice. Just going to double check them real quick. And that's how you do it. I'm just going to do the same to the other side. And it should not leak at all, but if it does have the rare chance of leaking, I'm just going to tell them to get new valve covers, but I don't think it's going to. I've done this so many times. Okay, bye.